Congratulations, you've just woken up in Pompeii, a bustling Roman city in the shadow of the majestic Mount Vesuvius. It's the year 79 AD, and the date is October 24th. The air carries a pleasant crispness of autumn, and the streets are already coming alive with activity as the sun begins to paint the eastern sky with hues of gold and amber. The good news is you're in one of the most vibrant cities in the Roman Empire, a place where culture, commerce and leisure blend together in a colourful tapestry of daily life. The bad news? Well, today isn't going to end quite as peacefully as its beginning. You find yourself in a modest but comfortable domus, a Roman house near the centre of the city. The home belongs to a middle-class merchant family, and as you step into the atrium, the central courtyard of the house, you notice the morning light streaming through the compluvium, an opening in the roof that allows sunshine and rainwater to enter. Below it sits the impluvium, a shallow pool that collects rainwater for household use. The early morning is surprisingly peaceful, but there's already movement in the house. Slaves are bustling about, preparing for the day ahead. One is sweeping the mosaic floor with careful, practiced strokes, while another is filling clay lamps with olive oil for later use. You can smell freshly baked bread coming from the culina, the kitchen, where a cook is preparing the morning meal. The paterfamilias, the head of the household, a middle-aged man named Marcus Lucretius, emerges from his cubiculum, his sleeping chamber. He's dressed in a simple tunic, as he hasn't yet donned his toga for public appearances. He nods to the slaves and makes his way to a small shrine in the corner of the atrium. This is the lararium, where small statues of the household gods reside. Marcus lights a small incense stick and says a brief prayer for protection and prosperity. Another day of opportunity, he murmurs, unaware that his prayers for protection will be tested more severely than he could possibly imagine before the sun sets. You follow Marcus as he takes his morning meal in the triclinium, the dining room. Breakfast is simple: some bread, cheese, a few olives, and watered-down wine. Romans don't make a big fuss about breakfast, saving their appetites for the main meal later in the day. As Marcus eats, his wife Livia joins him, along with their 2 children, Quintus, a boy of 15, and Julia, a girl of 12. The family exchanges pleasantries, discussing plans for the day. Quintus will accompany his father to the forum to learn the family business, while Julia will stay with her mother to practice weaving and household management. The tremors kept me awake again last night, Livia mentions casually, breaking off a piece of bread. That's the 4th night this week. Marcus shrugs, seemingly unconcerned. The mountain always grumbles. Remember the big quake 17 years ago? We rebuilt then and life continued. These small tremors are nothing to worry about. If only he knew. You step outside with Marcus and Quintus as they leave for the forum. The streets of Pompeii are already teeming with life. The city has awoken, and its pulse is strong and steady. Shopkeepers are opening their establishments, pushing back wooden shutters to reveal counters laden with goods. Street vendors call out, advertising fresh produce, hot food, and various wares. The streets themselves are fascinating to modernise. Large stepping stones cross the roadways at regular intervals, allowing pedestrians to cross without stepping into the street, which often contained animal waste and garbage. Wheeled traffic, mostly carts pulled by mules or oxen, has to navigate around these stones, their wheels fitting into the worn grooves between them. You notice the careful planning of the city with its grid-like street layout. Pompeii is remarkably advanced, with an efficient water system bringing fresh water to public fountains located throughout the city. You pass one such fountain where people are gathering with clay jugs to collect their daily water, chatting and exchanging the latest gossip. "Did you feel the earth move again last night?" one woman asks another. "Yes, but my husband slept right through it," the other replies with a laugh. "He says Vesuvius is just reminding us who's in charge." The mundane conversation continues as they fill their water vessels, completely unaware of what the mountain truly has in store for them today. Marcus and Quintus make their way to the Forum, the beating heart of Pompeii. This large open plaza is surrounded by the most important buildings in the city, temples, government offices, and the basilica where legal matters are handled. The Forum is already bustling with activity. Merchants haggle with customers, politicians discuss matters of state, and ordinary citizens go about their business or simply enjoy the social atmosphere. Above it all looms Mount Vesuvius, its conical peak a constant presence in the lives of Pompeii's inhabitants. For generations, the volcano has been dormant, its fertile slopes covered with vineyards producing some of the finest wines in the empire. The people have grown comfortable in its shadow, never imagining the destructive power that lies dormant within. As the morning progresses, you follow various citizens through their daily routines, getting glimpses into different aspects of Pompeian life. A wealthy patrician woman visits the baths with her female slaves, partaking in the Roman bathing ritual, moving from the tepidarium, warm room, to the caldarium, hot room, and finally to the frigidarium, cold room. The baths are more than just places of hygiene. They're social centres, where women gossip, discuss politics, and forge business connections. "I've commissioned a new fresco for my garden wall," the patrician woman tells her companion as they relax in the tepidarium. "The artist is charging an absolute fortune, but my husband just made a killing in the wine trade, so let him complain." Elsewhere, you observe a group of men in a thermopolium, a kind of fast food establishment. These popular eateries feature L-shaped counters with large earthenware jars called dolia embedded in them, containing hot food and drink. The men stand at the counter enjoying a quick meal of fish stew and bread, washing it down with wine. The thermopolium owner chats with his customers, discussing the upcoming gladiatorial games scheduled for the following week. On the walls, vibrant frescoes depict various food items, advertising the specialties of the house. "My cousin is fighting in the games," one patron boasts. "He's been training for months, says he'll dedicate his victory to Venus, the patron goddess of Pompeii." As midday approaches, more people fill the streets. Children play games with nuts and small stones, while stray dogs weave between pedestrians, hoping for scraps. The sounds of commerce, conversation, and life fill the air, hammering from carpenter shops, the calls of vendors, laughter from taverns, and the occasional braying of a donkey. You return to the Forum where Marcus is conducting business, trading in textiles imported from the eastern provinces of the empire. Quintus watches and learns, occasionally running errands for his father or delivering messages to business associates. The boy is eager and bright, clearly hoping to take over the family business one day. It's close to the 6th hour, around noon by our modern reckoning, when the first sign of trouble appears. A slight tremor runs through the ground, causing cups to rattle on tables and hangings to sway from walls. Most people barely react. Minor earthquakes are common in the region, but this one is followed by another, slightly stronger. A few people glance uneasily toward Mount Vesuvius. For the first time, you notice something different about the mountain, a thin wisp of dark smoke rising from its peak. It's so subtle that most people don't even notice it yet. An old man with a weathered face points to the smoke. "The mountain is breathing heavily today," he remarks to no one in particular. There's a note of concern in his voice that wasn't present in the casual mentions of tremors earlier. Marcus notices it too, and pauses in his business dealings. "Perhaps we should conclude our business quickly today," he says to his trading partner. "I want to check on my family." As if responding to the growing concern, a deeper rumble emanates from the mountain and the ground trembles more noticeably. Now people are starting to pay attention. Conversations stop and heads turn toward Vesuvius. The thin wisp of smoke has thickened and darkened. Something is definitely happening in the streets. The mood shifts. The casual bustle takes on an edge of uncertainty. Parents call their children closer and merchants begin to secure their goods. No one is panicking yet. After all, the mountain has grumbled before, but there's a growing sense that something unusual is occurring. You follow Marcus and Quintus as they hurriedly make their way back home. The streets are becoming more crowded, as others are also deciding to return to their families. The tremors continue, increasing in frequency and strength. By the time they reach their domus, a cloud of dark smoke is clearly visible above the mountain. Livia and Julia are in the atrium, looking worried. "What's happening?" Livia asks as soon as they enter. "I'm not sure," Marcus replies, attempting to sound calm, "but I think we should prepare to leave the city, just as a precaution." As the family begins to gather valuables and necessities, a tremendous roar splits the air, so loud it seems to shake the very foundations of the earth. Everyone freezes, eyes wide with terror. You rush to the doorway and look toward Vesuvius. What you see turns your blood cold. The mountain's top has seemingly exploded, and a massive column of black smoke, ash, and fire is shooting thousands of feet into the sky. The column rises higher and higher, spreading at the top like a monstrous pine tree. As the family joins you at the door, their faces pale with fear, the first pieces of pumice, light, porous volcanic rock, begin to fall from the sky. They're small at first, no bigger than coins, pattering on the roof like hail. "Grab only what you can carry," Marcus orders, his voice tight with urgency. "We need to leave now." The family rushes to gather their most precious possessions: a small chest of coins, jewellery, a few family heirlooms. The slaves are instructed to take essential supplies. Outside, the streets are filling with panicked citizens. The falling pumice is getting larger, some pieces the size of a fist, causing injuries as they strike people. The sky, bright and blue just hours before, has darkened to an ominous grey-black, as if night has fallen at midday. Marcus leads his family toward the harbour, hoping to escape by sea. Thousands of others have the same idea, creating a terrifying crush of humanity flowing through the narrow streets. The air is becoming difficult to breathe, filled with ash and acrid fumes. "Cover your mouths with cloth," Marcus shouts over the din, tearing a piece from his tunic for Julia to use. The falling debris is getting heavier and more dangerous. Buildings are beginning to collapse under the weight accumulating on their roofs. The orderly streets have become obstacle courses of fallen masonry, abandoned possessions, and in some tragic cases, the bodies of those who have already succumbed. As you follow the desperate family through the choking darkness, witnessing the beginning of one of history's most famous natural disasters, you can't help but wonder how many will escape, and how many, like the city itself, will be frozen in time by the mountain's fury. The rhythmic falling of the pumice creates an almost hypnotic backdrop to the unfolding catastrophe. Tap, tap, tap on the stone streets, crack, snap, rumble as structures give way, and through it all the distant, continuous roar of the volcano, like some ancient god awakened from slumber and unleashing its wrath upon the mortal world. As Marcus and his family push through the panicked crowds toward the harbour, the blanket of ash grows thicker, the air harder to breathe. The once vibrant city is being slowly erased, covered in a shroud of grey that will preserve it for centuries to come. And as we leave the Lucretius family fighting for their lives in the growing darkness, we're reminded of how quickly our world can change, how the ordinary day that began with breakfast and business can transform into a desperate struggle for survival. The people of Pompeii woke that morning never imagining they would become a time capsule for future generations, their final moments preserved in ash, their daily lives frozen at the moment when Vesuvius reclaimed the land in its shadow. The gentle patter of pumice continues, like a soft rain that gradually builds in intensity. The family huddles closer together, their faces etched with fear yet determined to survive. The harbour is still far, and the path grows more treacherous with each passing moment. But they press on, step by difficult step, into a future none of them could have imagined when they greeted the morning sun. The Lucretius family pushes forward through streets that grow more unrecognizable by the minute. The elegant city of Pompeii, with its orderly grid of streets and beautiful buildings, is transforming into a grey wasteland. Ash coats everything like a winter snowfall, but this is no gentle snowscape. This powder burns the lungs and stings the eyes. "Stay close," Marcus shouts over his shoulder, gripping Quintus by one hand and Livia by the other. Julia clutches her mother's hand, her young face a mask of terror, partially hidden by the cloth covering her mouth and nose. Behind them follow two household slaves carrying bundles of essential supplies. The falling pumice has become a constant danger, the pieces growing larger. Some are now the size of small fruits, and they fall with enough force to cause serious injury. All around them, people are covering their heads with pillows, wooden boards, or anything else they can find to protect themselves from the bombardment. A man stumbles past, blood streaming from a wound on his forehead where a chunk of pumice struck him. "The harbour is chaos," he warns before continuing his flight in another direction. "Better to head for the hills." Marcus hesitates, uncertainty clouding his face. The family has been making for the harbour, hoping to escape by sea, but now doubt creeps in. Is that still the best option? He looks around at the frightened faces of his family, their expressions barely visible in the unnatural twilight that has descended upon the city. "What should we do, Father?" Quintus asks, his voice steady despite the fear evident in his eyes. At 15, he's trying hard to show courage, to be the man he's been raised to become. Before Marcus can answer, a tremendous crash sounds nearby as the roof of a shop collapses under the weight of accumulated pumice and ash. The ground shudders again. Another earthquake, one of dozens that have rippled through the city since the eruption began. "We continue to the harbour," Marcus decides firmly. "At least there, we have a chance of getting away from the mountain." The family presses on through streets that grow increasingly difficult to navigate. The ash is now ankle-deep in places, like treading through soft sand. Buildings that have stood for generations are beginning to fail, their roofs caving in, walls cracking from the repeated tremors and the weight bearing down on them. You follow close behind the family, witnessing their struggle and that of countless others around them. The city's population flows like panicked rivers through the streets, some toward the harbour, others toward the gates leading inland. In the growing darkness, faces appear and disappear, etched with terror, desperation, and in some cases, a strange resignation. Near the Temple of Apollo, you spot an elderly priest standing defiantly in the open forum, arms raised to the blackened sky. "Appease the gods," he cries to anyone who will listen. "Make offerings, pray for mercy." A few frightened citizens have gathered around him, kneeling in the ash, lips moving in desperate prayers. As you watch, a large piece of pumice strikes the old priest on the shoulder, sending him sprawling. His followers help him to his feet, and they retreat into the relative safety of the temple. Through the thickening apocalyptic haze, you catch glimpses of different scenes playing out across the city. A young mother wraps her infant in layers of cloth to protect it from the falling debris, then continues her flight with the baby cradled against her chest. A group of men break into an abandoned villa looking for valuables left behind. A dog runs frantically through the streets, barking and searching for its master. At the House of the Faun, one of the largest and most luxurious homes in Pompeii, you see the wealthy owner directing his numerous slaves to carry chests of valuables. "Quickly," he shouts, "to my ships! I have vessels waiting at the harbour." Meanwhile, the Lucretius family has reached the busy street of Via dell'Abbondanza, normally the bustling commercial heart of Pompeii. Now it's a corridor of fear, choked with fleeing citizens. The shops that line the street, bakeries, wineries, textile merchants and food stalls, stand abandoned, some with goods still displayed. Frozen moments of ordinary life interrupted by disaster. The air has grown thicker, harder to breathe. It's not just ash now, but also toxic fumes seeping up from beneath the earth. People around you are coughing, some collapsing to their knees, struggling for air. Cover your faces tighter, Marcus instructs his family. Breathe through the cloth. Julia stumbles, nearly falling in the thickening ash. One of the slaves, a man named Titus, who has been with the family for years, scoops her up without breaking stride. "I've got you, little mistress," he says, his own breathing laboured but his dedication unwavering. The group pauses briefly in the shelter of a portico to catch their breath. The scene around them is apocalyptic. The sky has darkened to a deep, unnatural black grey, with only the occasional flash of lightning from the eruption column providing brief, ghostly illumination. The continuous rain of pumice and ash creates a persistent, terrifying patter, like thousands of impatient fingers drumming on every surface. Livia clutches Marcus's arm. "The children," she says, her voice barely audible over the rumbling of the mountain and the sounds of panic around them. "We must think of the children. Are we making the right choice?" Before Marcus can answer, a man staggers toward them through the ash-filled portico. You recognise him as Numerius Papidius, a prominent citizen and friend of the family. "Marcus," he calls, his voice raspy from the ash. "Don't go to the harbour. I've just come from there." The sea has withdrawn hundreds of feet from the shore. Ships are stranded in the mud, and the waves, when they return, he makes a crashing gesture with his hands. Some vessels have already been swamped. This is grim news indeed. When the sea retreats dramatically, it often returns with devastating force, something understood even in ancient times. The harbour may not be the sanctuary they had hoped for. "What are you going to do?" Marcus asks his friend. "My family has taken shelter in the cellar of my country villa outside the city walls," Numerius replies. "I came back to help others. The stone buildings are strongest. Some may survive if the roofs don't collapse from the weight." As if to emphasise his point, another tremor shakes the ground, and more pumice rains down around the portico. A section of cornice breaks free from the building across the street, crashing into the ash-covered ground with a muffled thud. Marcus looks at his family, his wife's frightened face, his son's determined expression, his daughter held safely in the arms of their loyal slave. The decision weighs heavily on him. Continue to the uncertain harbour, try to flee inland, or seek shelter and wait out the mountain's fury. "We'll head for the Villa of the Mysteries," he decides finally, naming a large estate on the outskirts of the city. "My friend Lucius owns it. The buildings are strong, and it's far enough from the Forum that there will be fewer people seeking refuge there." Numerius nods in agreement. "A wise choice. The villa has thick walls and strong rooms. If any building survives, it might be one like that." With their new destination decided, the family moves out from the shelter of the portico. The going is even more difficult now. The ash is calf-deep in places, and the continuous rain of pumice has created treacherous piles of debris. They're forced to detour several times around collapsed buildings or streets made impassable by rubble. As they navigate through what was once the vibrant heart of Pompeii, you notice how the familiar landmarks of the city are being erased, covered in the grey shroud that has descended from Vesuvius. The colourful wall paintings, the street-side shrines to household gods, the political graffiti scrawled on walls, all gradually disappearing under layers of volcanic ash. The evacuation has become more desperate now. Those who delayed leaving are frantically trying to make up for lost time. An overloaded cart has tipped over at a corner, spilling a family's possessions across the street. The owner tries vainly to salvage what he can, while urging his wife and children to continue on foot. "Leave it all," he shouts when his wife tries to help him. "Just go, go!" The human drama unfolding around you is both heartbreaking and awe-inspiring. Acts of selfishness occur alongside moments of extraordinary heroism and sacrifice. A man abandons an elderly woman, presumably his mother, when she can't keep up with his pace. Moments later, a stranger stops to help the woman, half carrying her despite the danger to himself. through it all, Mount Vesuvius continues its assault. The roaring has not diminished. If anything, it has grown louder, a constant reminder of the unstoppable natural force being unleashed. The eruption column rises miles into the sky, spreading outward at its peak to form what modern volcanologists would call a pine tree shape, wide at the top, narrowing to the trunk-like column rising from the volcano's crater. As the Lucretius family makes its way toward the northwestern edge of the city, heading for the Villa of the Mysteries, the nature of the eruption begins to change. The continuous rain of pumice and ash is bad enough, but something far worse is brewing. You notice it first, a strange cloud forming on the slopes of the mountain, different from the towering column above. This cloud is hugging the ground, moving with terrifying speed down the mountainside toward the city. It's dark, roiling with internal lightning and consuming everything in its path. This is the first pyroclastic surge, a superheated avalanche of gas, ash and rock fragments that can move at hundreds of miles per hour and reach temperatures of hundreds of degrees. It represents the deadliest phase of the eruption, the one that will claim most of the lives lost in Pompeii. No one in the ancient world had names for these phenomena or understood the science behind them. All the Pompeians know is that something new and terrifying is approaching, something even more dangerous than what they've experienced so far. Look at that! Quintus points toward the mountain, his young face pale with terror. The ground-hugging cloud is moving with impossible speed, swallowing the countryside between the volcano and the city. Those who fled inland earlier may already be engulfed. "Run!" Marcus shouts, grabbing Julia from Titus and pushing his family forward with renewed urgency. "We must reach the villa now!" The family's pace increases to a desperate sprint, their feet slipping and sliding in the ash. All around them, others who have spotted the approaching cloud are also running, a mass exodus driven by pure survival instinct. The Villa of the Mysteries lies just ahead, its red walls barely visible through the ash-filled air, named for the remarkable frescoes inside depicting mysterious ritual ceremonies. The villa is one of the grandest private homes in the area, situated just outside the Herculaneum Gate on the northwestern edge of the city. They aren't the only ones seeking shelter there. Dozens of people are already huddled inside the villa's peristyle, the columned garden at the centre of the house. Some are residents of the villa, others are refugees like the Lucretius family. The owner, Lucius Istasidius, a wealthy merchant and old friend of Marcus, greets them with grim relief. "Thank the gods you made it," he says, embracing Marcus briefly. "We've been taking in as many as we can." The peristyle would normally be a place of beauty and tranquility, with its elegant columns surrounding a garden filled with flowers, statues, and a central fountain. Now it's a haven of desperate last resort, crowded with frightened people watching the sky growing ever darker outside. "The cloud from the mountain," Marcus begins, trying to catch his breath. "It's coming this way." "I know," Lucius interrupts, his face grave. "We've been watching it. That's why I've instructed everyone to move to the inner rooms, away from the atrium and any entrances. The deeper rooms without windows may offer more protection." As they speak, a woman rushes into the peristyle from the direction of the atrium. "It's coming!" she screams. The black cloud is at the walls. Panic erupts among the refugees. People begin to push toward the inner doorways, trying to reach the windowless rooms at the centre of the villa. In the crush, families are separated, children cry out for parents, and the elderly struggle to keep their footing. "Stay together!" Marcus shouts to his family, forming a human chain with their hands linked tightly. "Don't let go!" You follow them as they push through the panicked crowd, making their way toward a small, sturdy room that might have once been a storage area for wine or provisions. Its thick walls and lack of windows make it one of the safer places to shelter. The room is already crowded, but people squeeze tighter to make space for newcomers. Oil lamps provide flickering illumination, casting long shadows across frightened faces. The air is stale and increasingly difficult to breathe, filled with the exhalations of dozens of people and the ash that clings to their clothes and hair. Outside, the world has gone completely dark. Even the meagre light that penetrated the ash cloud earlier has vanished. The sound of falling pumice on the villa's roof is now accompanied by a new noise, a deep, rushing roar growing rapidly louder. "Get down!" someone shouts. "Cover your heads!" The Lucretius family huddled together in a corner of the room. Marcus wraps his arms around Livia and Julia, while Quintus presses close to his father's side. The loyal slaves Titus and a woman named Drusilla crouch nearby, their status distinctions temporarily forgotten in this moment of shared humanity facing death. "I love you all," Marcus says, his voice steady despite the terror in his eyes. "Whatever happens, know that." The rushing sound outside grows to a deafening roar. The walls of the villa begin to vibrate, and dust shakes loose from the ceiling. People pray, weep, or sit in stunned silence. Some cover their ears against the terrible noise, while others embrace loved ones. And then it hits. The pyroclastic surge that will define Pompeii's fate. The superheated cloud of gas and ash envelops the villa, seeking entry through every crack and opening. The temperature outside rises to hundreds of degrees in an instant. Inside the windowless room, the temperature also begins to climb, though more slowly. The thick stone walls provide some insulation, but the air grows hotter by the second. Breathing becomes painful as the heated air scorches lungs. "Breathe through your tunics," Marcus gasps, pressing the fabric of his garment to his mouth. Shallow breaths. The heat continues to rise. Some of the weaker individuals, the very young, the elderly, those already weakened by the arduous evacuation, begin to lose consciousness. The room grows quieter except for laboured breathing and occasional moans of distress. Julia slumps against her father, her small body going limp. "Julia!" Livia cries out, shaking her daughter. The girl's eyes flutter but don't open. "She's just fainted from the heat," Marcus assures his wife, though uncertainty edges his voice. "She'll be all right." But the pyroclastic surge outside shows no signs of abating. If anything, it grows more intense. The heat in the room rises to unbearable levels. One by one, people succumb to the heat and toxic gases seeping in, their bodies arranged in final postures of desperation, protection, or resignation. Marcus pulls his family closer, their bodies pressed together in one final embrace. "Close your eyes," he whispers. "Think of cool breezes from the sea. Think of spring flowers in the forum. Think of..." His voice trails off as consciousness begins to slip away from all of them. The loyal slaves, Titus and Drusilla, reach out to touch the family they served in life, all social boundaries erased in their final moments. Outside, the pyroclastic surge continues its deadly passage over Pompeii, sealing the fate of the city and most of its inhabitants. The ash and pumice continue to fall, burying structures and bodies, creating the time capsule that will preserve this moment for centuries to come. In their final moments, as consciousness fades, the Lucretius family and those around them have no idea that they will become a window into Roman life for future generations. They don't know that their city, their homes, their possessions, and, tragically, their bodies will be preserved in stunning detail, a snapshot of a vibrant civilization frozen at the moment of catastrophe. The pyroclastic surge passes, but others will follow. The eruption of Vesuvius will continue for many hours, perhaps days, adding layer upon layer of volcanic material to the shroud covering Pompeii. When it finally ends, the city will lie beneath meters of ash and pumice, entirely hidden from view. Its location eventually forgotten as new settlements are built nearby. The rushing sound fades, replaced by an eerie silence broken only by the softer patter of falling ash. The first surge has passed, leaving destruction in its wake. In the room where the Lucretius family sought shelter, most have already perished from the intense heat and toxic gases. A few stronger individuals cling to life, but their fate is sealed by subsequent surges that will come in waves throughout the eruption. As life ebbs from the last survivors, the ash continues to fall, gently covering bodies, filling rooms and smoothing over the contours of the once bustling city. It falls on the forum where merchants conducted business just hours before. It falls on the amphitheatre where gladiators once fought to the cheers of thousands. It falls on the temples where prayers went unanswered, on the baths where citizens once socialised, on the bakeries where bread still sits in ovens, never to be eaten. Pompeii is becoming a ghost city, its streets empty except for the bodies of those who couldn't escape, now being gently covered by the volcanic shroud that will preserve them for millennia. The vibrant wall paintings, the graffiti, the mosaics, all are being sealed away, protected from the ravages of time by the very disaster that claimed so many lives. In the room where the Lucretius family made their last stand, the ash begins to filter in through cracks and openings, covering the huddled bodies. As the organic material of their bodies eventually decays, they will leave behind hollows in the hardened ash, human-shaped voids that, centuries later, archaeologists will fill with plaster to recreate their final moments. The loyal slave Titus, still holding his little mistress Julia protectively, Livia and Marcus embracing, their son Quintus pressed against them, Drusilla reaching out to touch the family she served. These postures of their final moments will be preserved, a heartbreaking tableau of a family facing death together. And so they remain, as the hours turn to days, the days to years, the years to centuries. Pompeii slips from memory, its location lost to time. The eruption fades into legend, a cautionary tale passed down through generations. And all the while, beneath the fertile soil that will eventually cover the ash, the city waits, its streets, buildings, artifacts, and people perfectly preserved. A moment in history frozen by Vesuvius's fury. The gentle rhythm of falling ash continues like a lullaby to the dead city. Layer upon layer, it builds up, creating the time capsule that will eventually reveal so much about Roman life. The mountain has reclaimed what stood in its shadow, and in doing so has paradoxically ensured that Pompeii and its people will never truly be forgotten. As the last ash settles and the mountain finally grows quiet, Pompeii enters a long sleep, waiting for the day, centuries in the future, when it will be rediscovered, and its story, including that of the Lucretius family, will finally be told. As ash continues to fall over Pompeii, let's shift our gaze across the Bay of Naples to Misenum, where a 17-year-old boy named Gaius Plinius Caecilius Secundus, known to history as Pliny the Younger, is witnessing the catastrophe from a distance. His account, written years later in letters to the historian Tacitus, will provide the only eyewitness record of the eruption to survive to modern times. Young Pliny is staying with his uncle, Pliny the Elder, who commands the Roman fleet stationed at Misenum. The elder Pliny is not just a naval commander, but also a renowned natural philosopher and author known for his curiosity about the natural world. It's early afternoon when Pliny's mother points to a strange cloud rising from the direction of Vesuvius. "Look," she says, gesturing toward the horizon. "What kind of cloud is that?" Pliny and his uncle step outside to observe the phenomenon. What they see is extraordinary, a cloud shaped unlike any they have ever witnessed before. Later, Pliny the Younger will describe it in his letter to Tacitus as resembling a pine tree more than any other tree. Like a very tall trunk, it rose high into the sky and then split into branches. This pine tree shape, a tall column spreading out at the top, is now recognized by volcanologists as the classic form of a Plinian eruption, named, fittingly enough, after Pliny the Elder, who was about to sail toward it. For a time, uncle and nephew simply observe the unusual cloud with scientific curiosity. They don't yet understand the danger it represents to the communities at the foot of the mountain, but as they watch, the cloud grows larger and darker, its true nature becoming more apparent. Messages begin to arrive from terrified friends living near the volcano, pleading for rescue. Pliny the Elder, driven by both his duty as naval commander and his scientific curiosity, decides to launch rescue ships to help evacuate people from the coastline nearest the eruption. "I'm going to get closer to understand this phenomenon," he tells his nephew, "and to help those in danger." Young Pliny asks to accompany his uncle, but the elder Pliny refuses. "Stay with your mother," he insists. "Continue your studies." This decision will save the younger Pliny's life and ensure that an account of the disaster survives for future generations. As his uncle departs with the fleet, young Pliny returns to his studies, attempting to maintain some normalcy despite the ominous cloud growing on the horizon. But as the afternoon progresses, the situation at Misenum itself begins to deteriorate. Across the bay, the Lucretius family and others trapped in Pompeii are already fighting for their lives, but at Misenum the danger is only beginning to become apparent. The ground trembles with increasingly violent earthquakes. The sea recedes strangely from the shore, stranding marine creatures on the suddenly exposed seabed. Then, most alarmingly, a black cloud from the eruption begins to spread across the bay toward them. "We must leave the house," Pliny's mother urges, as buildings around them begin to shake dangerously. It isn't safe to stay indoors. They join a stream of frightened citizens, heading away from the shoreline and the approaching cloud. The sky darkens to pitch black, though it's still daytime. Pliny will later write that it was not the dark of a moonless night, but as if the lamp had been put out in a closed room. Ash begins to fall, then pumice stones. People tie pillows to their heads for protection, the same desperate measure being taken in Pompeii. In the darkness, parents lose children and friends lose each other. Cries of people searching for loved ones mix with prayers and lamentations. "Mother," young Pliny says, taking her hand firmly, "whatever happens, we stay together." Through the terrifying night, they wait out the disaster, not knowing if they'll live to see morning or if his uncle will return from his rescue mission. He won't. Pliny the Elder will die on the shores near Stabiae, likely overcome by toxic fumes while trying to help those fleeing by sea. While the younger Pliny and his mother survive their brush with death at Misenum, let's return to Pompeii to witness other stories unfolding in the doomed city. Near the great amphitheatre in the southeastern part of the city, a gladiator named Celadus has been training when the eruption begins. Known as the man the girls sigh for, according to graffiti found on Pompeii's walls, Celadus is a popular fighter, a Thracian-style gladiator who has won numerous bouts. The gladiatorial barracks are eerily empty today. Many of his fellow fighters are in Naples for games being held there. When the mountain first erupts, Celadus is cleaning his equipment in the training yard, preparing for upcoming matches. His trainer, an older man named Saturninus, who was once a celebrated gladiator himself, is the first to notice the strange cloud. "Celadus," the old man calls, pointing toward Vesuvius. "Something's happening at the mountain." The gladiator looks up from polishing his helmet, his practiced eyes narrowing at the sight. "That's no ordinary cloud," he says, setting aside his work. "I've seen smoke from forest fires in my homeland. This is different." As the gravity of the situation becomes clear, Celadus faces a choice. As a gladiator, he is essentially property, bound to his lanista, the owner of his troop. Technically, he shouldn't leave without permission, but with ash beginning to fall and panic spreading through the city, such niceties of ownership seem suddenly meaningless. "I'm going to help people get out of the city," he tells Saturninus. "Are you coming?" The old trainer nods. Better to die doing something worthwhile than cowering here. Together, they venture into the increasingly chaotic streets. Their powerful builds and the natural authority that comes from their profession help them organize small groups of panicked citizens, directing them toward the gates leading away from the volcano. "Cover your heads!" Celadus shouts above the din, demonstrating by tying a piece of cloth over his own short-cropped hair. "Stay together! Move quickly, but don't run blindly!" For several hours, the gladiator and his trainer work tirelessly, helping the elderly who have fallen, carrying children whose parents are overburdened, and providing a sense of order amid the chaos. They make multiple trips to different neighborhoods, guiding groups to relative safety before returning for more. But as the pyroclastic surges begin to hit the city, even their courage and strength prove insufficient against the power of nature. Caught in the open during one of their rescue efforts, they have nowhere to hide when the superheated cloud of gas and ash rolls down the streets. In their final moments, the gladiator and trainer stand their ground rather than flee, helping others into a sturdy building nearby. They are still ushering the last stragglers to shelter when the surge engulfs them, preserving them forever in poses not of combat, but of compassion. Elsewhere in the city, in the elegant house of the Vetii, two wealthy freedman brothers have a different experience of the disaster. Aulus and Numerius Vettius, former slaves who have built a successful business and risen to considerable prosperity, are known for their lavishly decorated home filled with beautiful frescoes and artwork. When the eruption begins, the brothers are hosting a business meeting with several important clients in their opulent triclinium, the dining room where Romans typically conducted business while reclining on couches and enjoying fine food and wine. "It's probably nothing serious," Aulus assures his guests as the first tremors shake the cups on the table. Vesuvius often grumbles. But as ash begins to fall and the sky darkens, even the optimistic Aulus must acknowledge the danger. The brothers quickly gather their valuables, coins, jewellery, and small precious items that can be carried easily. Their clients depart hastily to check on their own families. "What about the artwork?" Numerius asks, looking around at the beautiful frescoes that adorn their walls, scenes of cupids engaged in various trades that likely represent the brothers' business interests. "We can't take the walls with us," Aulus responds pragmatically. "We'll acquire new art when we rebuild elsewhere." Unlike many Pompeians who delay their evacuation too long, the Vetii brothers act decisively. They gather their household slaves, about a dozen men and women who maintain their luxurious lifestyle, and prepare to leave the city. "You have served us well," Numerius addresses the assembled slaves. "Follow us now, and if we survive this calamity, I vow you will be rewarded for your loyalty." It's a moment that reveals much about Roman society. Even in this life-or-death situation, the social hierarchy remains intact. The slaves have no choice but to follow their masters, their fates tied inextricably to men who once were slaves themselves. The Vetii household sets out together, the brothers carrying their valuables, the slaves burdened with supplies and additional household treasures. They make for the Nuceria Gate, planning to head southeast, away from the volcano. But the gods, it seems, have different plans for the household. As they make their way through the ash-filled streets, the roof of a nearby building collapses under the weight of accumulated pumice. Aulus is struck by falling debris and severely injured. The household is forced to take shelter in a nearby Phalonica, a laundry workshop with thick walls. There, as Numerius tends to his brother's wounds, the first pyroclastic surge finds them. The intense heat passes through the building despite its sturdy construction. Masters and slaves perish together, their bodies eventually creating the hollow impressions in the ash that future archaeologists will discover and preserve with plaster casts. Their final tableau reveals much about human relationships in their society. Numerius cradling his injured brother, slaves gathered around, one woman holding a child. In death, the barriers between them seem less significant than the shared humanity of their final moments. Let's turn our attention now to one of the most unique features of Pompeii's destruction, the preservation of the mundane, everyday aspects of Roman life, frozen in time by the disaster. In a modest thermopolium, an ancient fast food establishment, on the corner of the Via dell'Abbondanza and the Vicolo di Eumachia, the proprietor Vetutius Placidus is reluctant to abandon his livelihood when the eruption begins. As others flee past his shop, he continues to serve hot food and drinks from the large earthenware jars embedded in his L-shaped counter. It will pass, he tells a customer who suggests he close up shop and evacuate. And when it does, people will be hungry and thirsty. That's good business. Vetutius continues working as ash begins to accumulate in the street outside. His wife pleads with him to leave, but he's stubborn. Just a little longer, he insists. People need hot food on a day like this. Business actually improves for a time as refugees from neighborhoods closer to the volcano stop for sustenance before continuing their journey. Vetutius serves them all, accepting coins and filling cups with watered wine and bowls with simple stews kept warm in his counter jars. But as conditions worsen and fewer customers appear, even Vetutius must acknowledge the danger. He finally begins closing his shop, securing what valuables he can in a small chest, the day's earnings and some family jewellery. His wife has already packed a bundle of clothes and household necessities. They are about to leave when several people rush into the thermopolium seeking shelter from the increasingly heavy fall of pumice. Among them is a pregnant woman, clearly exhausted and struggling to continue. Please smile, she gasps. I need to rest just for a moment. Vetutius's wife, Astia, helps the woman to a bench. Of course, she says, glaring at her husband to silence any objection. Sit here, catch your breath. That moment of compassion seals their fate. The delay proves costly as they wait for the pregnant woman to recover enough to continue. By the time they're ready to leave, the fall of pumice and ash has become too dangerous to venture outside. They are forced to remain in the thermopolium, hoping the sturdy building will protect them. When archaeologists excavate this site centuries later, they will find their bodies in the back room of the shop, along with the shop's strongbox containing 683 coins. That day's earnings never spent. The pregnant woman will be among them, her unborn child forever unborn. Their story, the reluctant shopkeeper, his compassionate wife, the exhausted mother-to-be, represents the thousands of individual tragedies that make up the larger disaster. Each person caught in the eruption had plans, hopes, and a future they imagined, all cut short by the mountain's fury. As night falls on the first day of the eruption, most of those who managed to escape have already fled. Those who remain in Pompeii are primarily those who delayed too long or sought shelter rather than evacuation. The pyroclastic surges that sweep through the city throughout the evening claim most of these lives. By morning on October 25th, many parts of Pompeii lie under several feet of ash and pumice. Buildings have collapsed, streets are impassable, and most of the population has either escaped or perished. But the mountain is not yet finished with the city. Throughout this second day, additional surges sweep down from Vesuvius, some reaching as far as Misenum, where Pliny the Younger continues to wait out the disaster. These surges add more layers to the burial of Pompeii, Herculaneum, and other settlements around the volcano's base. One of the most remarkable aspects of the disaster is how different areas are affected in different ways. Pompeii, lying to the southeast of the volcano, is primarily buried in pumice and ash that falls from the sky. Herculaneum to the west is hit more directly by pyroclastic flows that bury it in a harder, more cement-like material up to 75 feet deep in places. This difference in burial material leads to different types of preservation. In Pompeii, the ash creates moulds around bodies as they decompose, leaving hollow spaces that archaeologists will later fill with plaster to recreate the victims' final poses. In Herculaneum, the flesh is essentially carbonized, preserving even details like facial expressions and clothing. The eruption continues for approximately 18-20 hours in total, though smaller emissions and earthquakes persist for days afterward. When it finally ends, Pompeii has vanished from the landscape, buried under approximately 20 feet of volcanic material. The region is unrecognizable. Where a thriving city once stood, there is now only a grey, lifeless plain. The coastline has been extended as volcanic material fills in part of the bay. Rivers have been diverted, valleys filled, and hills created where none existed before. Those who survived the disaster, perhaps as many as half of Pompeii's population who evacuated early enough, can't even identify where their city once stood. The landmarks are gone, the geography altered. Many refugees make their way to Naples or other cities, carrying nothing but the clothes on their backs and whatever small valuables they manage to take with them. Emperor Titus, who has been ruling for just 2 months when the disaster occurs, orders relief efforts for the region. He appoints a committee of senators to organize aid and even contributes funds from his personal treasury to help the refugees. He will later visit the area himself to assess the damage. But Pompeii is not rebuilt. Unlike other Roman cities destroyed by disaster and then restored, Pompeii and Herculaneum are abandoned entirely. The layer of volcanic material covering them is simply too deep, the destruction too complete to make reconstruction practical. Over time, even the memory of exactly where these cities stood begins to fade. New settlements arise in the region, built upon the new landscape created by the eruption. Farmers plough fields above the buried city, occasionally turning up artifacts but not recognizing their significance. For nearly 1,700 years, Pompeii sleeps beneath its ashen blanket, a time capsule preserving a single day in the life of a Roman city. The people frozen in their final moments, the buildings with their vivid artwork, the streets with their wheel ruts and stepping stones, the shops with goods still on shelves, all wait in darkness for the day they will be rediscovered and their story told again. The rhythm of falling ash has long since ceased, replaced by the subtle shifting of earth as it settles over centuries. The mountain that claimed so many lives returns to dormancy, though it will awaken again many times throughout history. The landscape heals, green plants growing from the fertile volcanic soil, nature reclaiming what was briefly a wasteland. And so Pompeii rests, its streets silent, its people stilled, its daily life interrupted mid-moment, preserved not in life, but in death, waiting for future generations to uncover its secrets and learn from its tragedy. The ash-covered ruins of Pompeii lay silent for centuries, the once bustling streets now still and hidden from the world above. The memory of the city faded, its exact location forgotten as generations passed. Farmers tilled the fertile volcanic soil that covered the ancient ruins, unaware of the extraordinary time capsule that lay beneath their feet. Occasionally, someone might dig a well or plough a field and encounter a peculiar stone or artifact, but these discoveries were dismissed as curiosities, their true significance overlooked. Nearly 17 centuries passed in this way. The Roman Empire rose and fell. Nations were born and transformed. The world changed in countless ways that the citizens of Pompeii could never have imagined. And all the while, their city waited, preserved in its moment of tragedy, untouched by time. The rediscovery of Pompeii began not with a grand expedition, but through a series of accidents and coincidences. In 1592, an architect named Domenico Fontana was digging a canal to divert the Sarno River when he uncovered ancient walls and inscriptions, but he simply noted these findings and continued his work, not realizing their importance. The true rediscovery would wait until 1738, when workers digging the foundations for a summer palace for the King of Naples, Charles of Bourbon, struck something unusual: ancient marble and bronze statues of remarkable craftsmanship. The king, intrigued by these findings, ordered more excavations in the area. Initially, these excavations were not what we would consider proper archaeology today. They were more like treasure hunts, with workers instructed to find valuable objects that could decorate the king's palaces or be added to his collection. Little attention was paid to the context of these discoveries, or to less spectacular findings that might have revealed more about daily life. The excavators didn't even know which city they had found. At first, they believed they were excavating Stabiae, another town destroyed by Vesuvius. It wasn't until 1763 that an inscription was discovered clearly identifying the site as Pompeii. Meanwhile, nearby Herculaneum had been discovered in 1709 through a similar accident when a farmer digging a well found theatrical marble works. Let's imagine one of these early excavations through the eyes of a young worker named Paolo, hired to dig at the site in the 1740s. Paolo wipes sweat from his brow as he carefully scrapes away at the compacted ash with his trowel. He's been working at the excavation site for 3 months now, one of dozens of labourers employed by the king to uncover whatever treasures might lie beneath the ground at the foot of Mount Vesuvius. "Careful with that," barks the overseer, a stern man named Alcubierre who supervises the dig on behalf of the king. "Anything valuable you damage comes out of your pay." Paolo nods and continues his work more cautiously. Yesterday, they uncovered part of what appears to be a large building with columns. Today, they're clearing the interior, and Paolo has been assigned to excavate what seems to be a room with colourful paintings on the walls. As he scrapes away more ash, something catches his eye, a glint of metal. His heart quickens. Finding valuable objects means a bonus, and his family could certainly use the extra money. Carefully, he exposes more of the object, revealing an exquisitely crafted bronze lamp in the shape of a shoe. "I found something, sir," he calls to the overseer, who hurries over with several other officials. The lamp is quickly documented in a basic notebook, its location noted and a simple sketch made, before it's removed from the site to join other treasures destined for the king's collection. Paolo feels a momentary pang of regret as it's taken away. There's something poignant about removing these objects from where they've rested for so long, disconnecting them from their original context. "Back to work," the overseer commands. "There's more to find." And indeed, there is. The room Paolo is excavating turns out to be remarkably well preserved, with vibrant frescoes depicting mythological scenes covering the walls. The officials are excited by this discovery, but they're primarily interested in whether the paintings can be cut from the walls and transported to the royal collection, not in understanding the room's purpose or the lives of those who once used it. This approach, prioritizing beautiful objects over archaeological context, characterized the early excavations at Pompeii. Many artifacts were removed with little documentation, and entire sections of the city were excavated haphazardly, with workers tunneling through structures and often causing damage. Despite these limitations, word of the discovery spread throughout Europe, capturing the imagination of scholars, artists, and wealthy travellers. Pompeii became an essential stop on the Grand Tour, an educational journey undertaken by young European aristocrats. These visitors often took souvenirs, further depleting the site of its artifacts. As the 18th century gave way to the 19th, attitudes toward archaeology began to change. Scholars started to recognize that there was value not just in beautiful objects, but in understanding the context in which they were found, in reconstructing daily life rather than simply collecting treasures. One of the most significant figures in this evolution was Giuseppe Fiorelli, who became director of the excavations in 1863 after Italy's unification. Fiorelli revolutionized the approach to Pompeii, introducing systematic methods that form the foundation of modern archaeology. "We must excavate not to find beautiful things but to increase historical knowledge," Fiorelli insisted to his workers. "Every fragment, every wall, every space has a story to tell." Under Fiorelli's direction, Pompeii was divided into a grid of regions and insular blocks, creating a system for precisely documenting the location of every finding. He insisted on careful excavation that preserved structures rather than tunneling through them. Perhaps most importantly, he made sure that ordinary objects, cooking utensils, tools, everyday pottery, were valued and preserved alongside more spectacular findings. But Fiorelli's most famous innovation came from a remarkable observation. While excavating, workers occasionally encountered curious cavities in the volcanic ash, spaces where something had been encased but had since decomposed, leaving its impression in the compacted material. Fiorelli realized that these cavities were the spaces left by the bodies of victims. Over centuries, the soft tissues had decayed, but the hardened ash had retained the exact shape of their bodies at the moment of death. In a stroke of genius, he developed a technique for filling these cavities with plaster, creating casts that revealed the victims in astonishing detail, their postures, clothing, and even facial expressions preserved in their final moments. Let's imagine the day of this groundbreaking discovery. It's a warm spring morning in 1863, and Fiorelli is overseeing excavations in a street near the Stabian Gate. A worker named Marco calls out excitedly, having discovered a large cavity in the ash. "Director Fiorelli, there's something strange here. A large hollow space with what looks like bones inside." Fiorelli hurries over, his scholarly mind already racing with possibilities. He examines the cavity carefully, noting the human bones visible at one end. "This is it," he murmurs, almost to himself. "This is what I've been theorizing about." He turns to his assistant. "Bring the plaster mixture immediately. We're going to try something new." Workers carefully mix plaster of Paris with water, creating a liquid that can be poured into the cavity. Fiorelli directs the operation, ensuring the plaster flows into every part of the space. Then they wait for it to harden, the anticipation palpable among the gathered workers and scholars. The next day, they carefully chip away the surrounding ash to reveal what the plaster has captured, and the result is breathtaking. There, rendered in perfect detail, is the form of a person caught in their final moment. It's a man lying on his back, his hands raised in a futile attempt to protect himself from the deadly pyroclastic surge. The plaster has captured every detail, the folds of his clothing, his strapped sandals, even the agonized expression on his face. "Remarkable," whispers one of the scholars present. "It's as if we're looking at him across the centuries at the very moment of his death." Fiorelli nods solemnly. "This is not just a scientific technique," he says. "This is our duty to the dead, to remember them, to bear witness to their final moments." This technique would eventually be used to create hundreds of casts, each telling its own poignant story. A mother cradling her child, a dog straining at its chain, a group of people huddled together in their final moments. These casts humanized the disaster in a way that artifacts alone never could, creating a powerful emotional connection between modern viewers and the ancient tragedy. As the excavations continued through the late 19th and into the 20th century, more and more of Pompeii was uncovered, revealing a remarkably complete picture of Roman urban life. Ordinary homes, shops, public buildings, streets, water systems, graffiti, all preserved as if frozen in time. One particularly remarkable discovery came in the form of carbonized food items, bread loaves still in ovens, fruits in bowls, and even complete meals that had been on tables when the eruption began. These findings provided unprecedented insight into the Roman diet and food preparation methods. The House of the Vetti, which we visited earlier in our story, was excavated in the 1890s, revealing some of the most beautiful and well-preserved frescoes in all of Pompeii. The brothers Aulus and Numerius, wealthy freedmen who had once been slaves themselves, had clearly spared no expense in decorating their home with vibrant artwork depicting mythological scenes and charming cupids engaged in various trades. Nearby, archaeologists discovered the plaster casts that may well have been the Vettier brothers and their household, confirming the story we imagined of their final moments together. The Thermopolium of Vetusius Placidus was excavated in the early 20th century, revealing the L-shaped counter with its embedded storage jars just as we described it. In a back room they found the strongbox containing 683 coins, the day's earnings that Vetusius never had a chance to spend. Each new discovery added another piece to the puzzle, allowing archaeologists and historians to reconstruct not just the buildings and streets of Pompeii, but the lives of its inhabitants, their work, their leisure activities, their religious practices, their social structures. The graffiti found on Pompeii's walls proved especially valuable, offering unfiltered glimpses into the thoughts, opinions, and daily concerns of ordinary people. Political slogans, advertisements, declarations of love, crude jokes and insults, all preserved exactly as they were written nearly 2 millennia ago. One wall bears the inscription, "Celadus the Thracian gladiator is the delight of all the girls." This simple graffito confirms our story of the popular gladiator who, in our narrative, died helping others escape the eruption. Another reads, "I made bread here, baker Proculus, a humble labourer leaving his mark for posterity, never imagining that his simple statement would be read thousands of years later." As excavations continued into the 20th century, archaeological methods became increasingly sophisticated. Scientists from various disciplines, volcanology, anthropology, paleobotany, and others, began to collaborate, each bringing their expertise to bear on understanding different aspects of Pompeii and its destruction. In the 1980s and 1990s, archaeologists began using more advanced techniques to examine the human remains found at Pompeii. By analysing bones, they could determine details about diet, health conditions, and even occupations. Dental analysis revealed surprisingly good oral health among many Pompeians, likely due to their low-sugar diet and the natural fluoride in the local water. More recently, DNA analysis has offered new insights into the population of Pompeii, revealing a genetic diversity that reflects the cosmopolitan nature of the Roman Empire. People from throughout the Mediterranean world and beyond lived and worked in this busy commercial centre. Perhaps most significantly, modern volcanologists have been able to study the eruption of Vesuvius in unprecedented detail, reconstructing the sequence of events that unfolded on that fateful October day in 79 AD. Their findings largely confirm the timeline we've described in our story. The initial column of ash and pumice, followed by pyroclastic surges that were responsible for most of the deaths in Pompeii and Herculaneum. Today, about 2/3 of ancient Pompeii has been excavated, with about 1/3 still buried beneath volcanic material. This unexcavated portion is now intentionally left buried by archaeologists, preserved for future generations with better techniques and technologies. It's a recognition that excavation is, by its nature, destructive. Once a site is dug up, some context is inevitably lost, even with the most careful methods. The excavated portions of Pompeii face their own preservation challenges. Exposure to the elements, rain, wind, sunlight, and temperature fluctuations causes deterioration of the ancient structures and artworks. Modern pollution and the vibrations from millions of tourist footsteps add to the stress on these fragile remains. In 2010, one of Pompeii's most famous buildings, the Schola Armaturarum, House of the Gladiators, collapsed after heavy rainfall, highlighting the ongoing risk to these irreplaceable archaeological treasures. This incident led to increased international attention and funding for conservation efforts at the site. Today, a team of archaeologists, conservators, architects and other specialists works continuously to preserve what has been excavated while continuing to study and learn from the site. New technologies, from ground-penetrating radar to 3D scanning, allow them to document the city in unprecedented detail and to monitor subtle changes that might indicate structural problems. Let's imagine a modern archaeological team at work in Pompeii. Dr. Elena Rossi carefully brushes dust from a newly uncovered mosaic floor in what appears to be a wealthy home in Pompeii's Region 9. Unlike the early excavators, who might have simply noted the mosaic's beauty before moving on, Dr. Rossi and her team document everything meticulously. A colleague photographs the mosaic from multiple angles, while another uses a specialized scanner to create a detailed 3D model. Nearby, a botanical archaeologist carefully collects samples from the garden soil for analysis, hoping to identify what plants grew here 2 millennia ago. "Look at this craftsmanship," Dr. Rossi remarks, pointing to the intricate pattern of the mosaic. The owner of this house spared no expense. See how the tesserae gets smaller and more detailed in the central emblem? That's the mark of a master craftsman. Her colleague nods. The pigments used here are interesting too. Some of these blues might have come from as far away as Afghanistan. It shows the reach of Roman trade networks. This level of detailed analysis, considering not just what was found, but what it tells us about technology, trade, and social status, represents the evolution of archaeological thought since those early treasure hunts of the 18th century. As they work, tourists observe from behind barriers, cameras clicking as guides explain the significance of what they're seeing. Pompeii receives over 2.5 million visitors annually, making it one of Italy's most popular tourist destinations and creating a delicate balance between accessibility and preservation. One of the most poignant aspects of Pompeii for modern visitors is the connection they feel to the ancient Romans who once walked these streets. The wheel ruts worn into the stone paving, the graffiti scratched onto walls, the counters of thermopolia worn smooth by thousands of leaning elbows. These tangible traces of everyday life create a bridge across the centuries. When they see the plaster casts of victims, a child curled up in fear, a dog contorted in its final struggles, a couple embracing as death approached, modern visitors often find themselves deeply moved. These are not merely archaeological specimens, but fellow human beings caught in a moment of terror and tragedy that transcends time. Archaeological work at Pompeii continues to this day, with new discoveries regularly adding to our understanding. In 2020, archaeologists uncovered a remarkably well-preserved thermopolium complete with decorated food containers, the remains of duck, goat, pig and fish, and frescoes advertising the establishment's offerings. It was as if the shop had been closed only yesterday rather than nearly 2,000 years ago. This ongoing work ensures that Pompeii remains not a static monument to the past, but a living laboratory where our understanding continually evolves. Each generation of archaeologists brings new questions, new techniques, and new perspectives to this extraordinary site. As night falls over the excavated ruins of Pompeii, the modern city lights twinkle in the distance, and Mount Vesuvius stands silhouetted against the darkening sky, a constant reminder of the natural force that both destroyed and preserved this ancient city. The volcano has erupted many times since 79 AD, most recently in 1944, and volcanologists consider it one of the most dangerous volcanoes in the world due to the large population living nearby. In the quiet evening hours, when the tourists have departed and only security guards patrol the silent streets, it's easy to imagine the ghosts of Pompeii's inhabitants going about their business. Marcus Lucretius negotiating with customers in the forum, Celadus the gladiator training in the barracks, Vetutius serving food from his thermopolium counter, the Vetii brothers hosting guests in their lavishly decorated triclinium. Their city, frozen in time by disaster, now serves as an unparalleled window into the ancient world, a reminder of both the fragility of human life and the enduring nature of human civilization. The story of Pompeii, its vibrant life, its sudden destruction, its long sleep beneath the ash, and its gradual awakening through archaeology, continues to captivate us, connecting us to our shared human past across the vast expanse of time. As the gentle Mediterranean breeze whispers through the ruins, carrying the scent of pine and distant seas, we can almost hear the echoes of Roman voices from that fateful day, going about their ordinary lives, unaware that their final moments would become an enduring testament to the human experience, preserved for thousands of years beneath the shadow of the mountain. The soft moonlight illuminates the ancient stones, casting gentle shadows across the forum where citizens once gathered, the temples where they prayed, and the homes where they lived, loved, and eventually met their end. In this peaceful night scene, so different from the chaos of the eruption, Pompeii continues its silent but eloquent testimony to the lives that were lived and lost here. Ordinary people whose extraordinary preservation allows us to reach across time and recognize our common humanity. The morning sun casts long shadows across Pompeii's ancient streets, illuminating the weathered stones that have witnessed the passage of countless centuries. Modern researchers arrive at the archaeological site equipped with technology that would seem like magic to the Romans who once walked these paths. Today's scientists are continuing a journey of discovery that began with those first excavations, but with tools and methods that grow more sophisticated with each passing year. Dr. Sofia Martinez adjusts her augmented reality headset as she walks through the house of the tragic poet, a well-preserved Pompeian home famous for its cave canem, beware of the dog mosaic at the entrance. The headset overlays digital reconstructions on the existing ruins, allowing her to see the house as it might have appeared on that fateful day in 79 AD. The vibrant wall paintings restored to their original colours, furniture placed in rooms now empty, and even animated figures moving through the spaces, based on archaeological evidence of how Romans used their homes. It's extraordinary, she tells her research assistant, who's documenting their observations. With this technology, we can test theories about daily life that were impossible to explore before. Look at how the light would have entered this atrium at different times of day. It completely changes our understanding of how these spaces functioned. Nearby, another team is using ground-penetrating radar to map structures still buried beneath the volcanic material. Unlike earlier generations who had to excavate to discover what lay beneath, these scientists can create detailed images of buried buildings without disturbing a single stone, preserving them for future researchers with even better techniques. We've identified what appears to be a large public building in the unexcavated section of Region 9, explains Dr. Paolo Russo, studying the radar imagery on his tablet. Based on its layout, it might be another bath complex, but rather than dig it up immediately, we're creating a complete digital model first. Future archaeologists will thank us for our restraint. This approach represents a profound shift in archaeological philosophy, where early excavators raced to uncover as much as possible as quickly as possible. Modern researchers often choose to leave discoveries buried, protected from exposure to the elements, pollution, and tourism until they can be properly preserved. In the laboratory section of Pompeii's research centre, other specialists apply equally advanced techniques to artefacts and human remains. A bioarchaeologist examines the teeth from a cast of a young woman, using isotope analysis to determine where she grew up based on the chemical signature of the water she drank as a child. She wasn't born in Pompeii, the scientist notes with interest. The isotope patterns suggest she grew up in North Africa, perhaps Alexandria. It's another piece of evidence showing how diverse and cosmopolitan this city was, a true crossroads of the Roman Empire. Nearby, a paleobotanist studies carbonized food remains from a recently excavated kitchen, identifying the exact species of plants that were being prepared for a meal never eaten. The analysis reveals not just what Pompeians ate, but their agricultural practices, trade connections, and even social status based on the types of food available to different households. In another lab, a team uses advanced imaging techniques to read carbonized scrolls from the Villa of the Papyri in neighbouring Herculaneum, texts that were thought to be lost forever, too fragile to unroll physically without destroying them. The villa contained what was essentially a private library, with hundreds of philosophical texts that offer unprecedented insight into intellectual life in the Roman world. We're revealing words that no human eye has seen in nearly 2,000 years, whispers a researcher, as text begins to appear on her screen. This particular scroll appears to contain unknown works of Epicurean philosophy. It's like receiving a message in a bottle across the centuries. These modern scientific approaches, from DNA analysis to 3D modelling to spectroscopic techniques for analysing pigments and materials, are revolutionising our understanding of Pompeii and its inhabitants. Each new investigation adds another layer to our knowledge, bringing us closer to the people who lived and died in the shadow of Vesuvius. But perhaps the most profound change in our relationship with Pompeii is not technological but philosophical, a shift in how we view these ancient remains and our responsibility toward them. Dr. Martinez removes her AR headset and gazes at the actual ruins surrounding her. Technology helps us see what Pompeii was, she reflects. But there's something powerful about engaging with what it is now, too. A place transformed by catastrophe into something entirely different but no less meaningful. This perspective represents a growing recognition among archaeologists that ruins have their own significance and integrity. The Pompeii we can visit today is not simply a damaged version of the Roman city. It is a unique cultural landscape created by the interaction of human construction, natural disaster, time, and archaeological intervention. This evolving relationship with the past extends beyond the scientific community to the millions of visitors who walk Pompeii's streets each year. For them, the city offers something rare in our modern world, a place where time seems to collapse, where the distance between us and our ancestors becomes momentarily negligible. Let's follow one such visitor, Emma, a college student from Chicago. As she experiences Pompeii for the first time, Emma stands in the Forum, the vast open plaza that once served as Pompeii's civic center. Her audio guide describes the buildings that once surrounded this space. The basilica, where legal matters were settled, the temples where citizens worshipped, the market where they traded goods. But Emma finds herself less interested in the architecture than in the smaller details that connect her to individual lives. She pauses to examine graffiti scratched into a wall, election endorsements, personal messages, even complaints about unfair treatment. Marcus Cyrenius Vatia for a deal. A good man, the poor man's friend, reads one political slogan. Emma smiles, thinking how little political advertising has changed in 2 millennia. Moving through the city, she steps into a Thermopolium, an ancient fast food establishment with its counters still intact. She can easily imagine weary shoppers stopping for a quick meal, workers grabbing lunch during a busy day, friends meeting for drinks and conversation. Not so different from how she and her friends might meet at a cafe between classes. It's when she reaches the Garden of the Fugitives that the human tragedy of Pompeii truly strikes her. Here, in a glass-covered area, are the plaster casts of 13 people who sought refuge from the eruption in a garden surrounded by walls. They lie as they fell. Men, women and children caught in their final moments. One figure has his hands raised to his face, perhaps trying to protect himself from the lethal gases. A small child lies close to an adult, likely a parent trying to provide comfort even in death. Emma stands in silence, unexpectedly moved by these strangers who died nearly 2,000 years ago. They are no longer abstract historical figures, but real people who feared and suffered and hoped, just as she would in their situation. In that moment, the centuries between them seem to vanish. This emotional connection to the past is one of Pompeii's most powerful gifts to the modern world. The city's unique preservation allows us to see ancient Romans not as remote historical abstractions, but as people remarkably similar to ourselves, people who wrote graffiti, who enjoyed street food, who worried about politics and money, who loved their families. The plaster casts especially create an almost uncomfortably intimate connection across time. Unlike typical archaeological remains, fragmented bones or grave goods, these casts capture people in their most vulnerable moments, their body language expressing fear, pain, resignation, or love. They remind us that beneath the differences of culture, language, and time lies a shared humanity and a common mortality. This recognition has profound implications for how we understand both the past and ourselves. It challenges the comfortable notion that ancient peoples were fundamentally different from us, that we have progressed beyond them in all meaningful ways. The people of Pompeii had different technologies and social structures, certainly, but their essential experiences, their joys and sorrows, their daily routines and special occasions, their relationships and aspirations resonate strongly with our own. As Emma continues her visit, she notices a small shrine in what was once someone's home, a lararium where a family would have made daily offerings to household gods and ancestors. The painted figures are still visible, protecting this space for nearly 2 millennia after the family they watched over perished. She reflects on how the Pompeians understood their place in the world, their relationship to gods, to nature, to time itself. They lived in a society that viewed time as cyclical rather than linear, that saw natural disasters as expressions of divine displeasure rather than geological processes. Yet their responses to danger, the instinct to protect loved ones, to carry valuables, to seek shelter, were entirely recognizable. Pompeii also offers sobering parallels to our modern relationship with natural hazards. The Pompeians built their beautiful city in the shadow of a volcano, either unaware of or undeterred by the risk it posed. They ignored warning signs, the earthquakes that preceded the eruption, the initial phases of the eruption itself, until it was too late for many to escape. How different is this from our modern cities built on fault lines or in hurricane zones? How often do we, like the Pompeians, convince ourselves that the danger isn't imminent, that we'll have time to react when necessary? The disaster at Pompeii wasn't simply a product of ancient ignorance. It reflects patterns of human behaviour and psychology that persist to this day. As the sun begins to set over Pompeii, casting a golden glow across the ancient stones, Emma finds herself at the edge of the excavated city, looking out over the areas still buried beneath volcanic ash. She wonders what secrets remain hidden there, what stories are yet to be told. This too is one of Pompeii's gifts, the recognition that our knowledge is always incomplete, that there is always more to discover. The city was buried suddenly, but its unveiling has been gradual, spanning centuries and continuing into our own time. Each generation uncovers not just more of the physical city, but new ways of understanding it, new questions to ask of the evidence. The sun dips lower and the first evening stars appear above Mount Vesuvius. The volcano stands as it has for millennia, a quiet sentinel now, but a reminder of nature's capacity for both creation and destruction. The fertile soil that makes this region so agriculturally productive is itself a product of volcanic activity. The disaster that destroyed Pompeii also preserved it, creating the extraordinary time capsule that continues to educate and move us. As visitors leave the archaeological park for the evening, a profound quiet settles over the ancient streets. In this stillness, it's easier to sense the echoes of those who walked here before, the sandaled feet on stone, the voices in now extinct Latin dialects, the everyday sounds of a city pulsing with life until the moment when nature intervened. What lessons should we take from Pompeii? Perhaps the most fundamental is a deeper appreciation for the fragility and preciousness of human life and achievement. The Pompeians built a sophisticated, beautiful city with advanced engineering, artistic masterpieces, complex social systems, only to have it erased in hours. Their story reminds us that all human creations exist in a delicate balance with natural forces beyond our control. Yet there is hope in this story too. The very existence of Pompeii as we know it today, preserved, studied, visited, appreciated, suggests that something of us may endure beyond our individual lives or even the civilizations we build. The Pompeians could never have imagined that their ordinary lives would fascinate people 2,000 years in the future, that their homes and possessions and bodies would be treated with reverence by cultures they couldn't envision. In this way, Pompeii speaks to our human desire for remembrance, for some form of immortality. The marks we leave, whether grand monuments or simple graffiti, may speak to future generations in ways we cannot predict. The plaster cast of a person whose name is lost to history may move a visitor from a distant future more deeply than the most elaborate tomb of an emperor. As night fully descends on Pompeii, the ancient city rests in darkness as it did for centuries beneath its blanket of ash. But it no longer rests in obscurity. Its streets have been walked again, its stories told anew, its people remembered. What was lost has been, in some measure, found. What was silenced speaks again. The cycle of day and night continues, as it has since long before Pompeii was built and will continue long after our own civilizations have transformed into something unrecognizable to us. The rhythm of human life, birth and death, creation and destruction, forgetting and remembering, plays out against the backdrop of geological time, where the lifespan of cities and empires is but a moment. In the quiet darkness of Pompeii at night, this perspective brings not despair, but a strange comfort. We are part of something larger than ourselves, a human story that stretches backward and forward in time, connecting us to those who came before and those who will follow. The Pompeians were not so different from us, and perhaps those who study our remains in some distant future will find the same to be true. Tomorrow, the sun will rise again over Pompeii. Archaeologists will continue their careful work of preservation and discovery. Visitors will walk the ancient streets, forming their own connections to the past. And perhaps somewhere, a child will hear the story of the city frozen in time and be inspired to become an archaeologist, historian, or storyteller, continuing the chain of remembrance that keeps Pompeii and its people alive in our collective imagination. The story of Pompeii, of life interrupted, of ordinary moments made extraordinary through preservation, of human vulnerability and resilience, reminds us to appreciate the beauty and fragility of our own daily existence. Like the Pompeians on the morning of October 24th, 79 AD, we cannot know what tomorrow may bring. We can only live our days with purpose and meaning, tending our gardens, creating our art, loving our families, building our communities, leaving traces that may, in ways we cannot imagine, speak to the future. As our journey through Pompeii comes to a close, we leave the ancient city to its quiet slumber under the stars. The streets that once echoed with Roman voices now whisper with memories. The homes that once sheltered families now shelter history. The lives that were suddenly cut short have, in a different way, been extended far beyond what their owners could have imagined, teaching us, moving us, connecting us across the vast expanse of time. And as we drift towards sleep ourselves, let's carry with us the gentle reminder that Pompeii offers to appreciate each ordinary day, to recognise our kinship with those who came before us, and to find meaning in the knowledge that though individual lives may be brief, humanity's story continues, linking past, present, and future in an unbroken chain of shared experience. The ancient Romans had a saying, memento mori, remember that you will die, but Pompeii adds a complementary truth. Remember also that something of us remains, that the small moments of our lives may speak to future generations in ways we cannot predict. This is perhaps Pompeii's most profound gift. Not just a window into the past, but a mirror that reflects our own humanity back to us, encouraging us to consider what traces we will leave behind, what stories will be told of us when our own chapter in history's book has closed. With that thought, we leave Pompeii to the watchful presence of Vesuvius and the gentle light of stars that shone on the city in its prime, witnessed its destruction, and now illuminate its afterlife as one of humanity's most powerful reminders of all that we share across the centuries. Our dreams and fears, our joys and sorrows, our capacity for creation and destruction, and our enduring need to connect with one another across the bridges of time.